Alright, so we just wrapped up first portion of the title block, so we got the floor plans on there at half-inch scale. Should have solid black wall fill and then the overall dimensions. So if I look at my project, that's going to sit in the upper left-hand corner of the project. Alright, now we'll go back and we'll start looking at how to do the site plan and then elevation. So the site plan should be pretty easy, especially after just doing the floor plans. Alright, so if we were to just drag and drop our site plan on, the site plan should have most of the stuff we want to see. I'm looking at mine right now and I don't quite see that. Alright, in 3D. I definitely have a lot more to it. It looks like I'm missing a little bit of water. Alright, but that's something we can go back and fix. But for the site plan itself, let's go back and take a look real quick. So if we activate this, a couple things. That's supposed to be full color, and it's supposed to be 1 inch equals 20 foot scale. Alright, so we'll check those things. Alright, so we're at 1 inch equals 20 foot scale. I'm taking a look at my site plan. Right now I have like no underlay turned on. I'm having trouble seeing my actual site and other things in the project. It looks like it's just because the visibility was off. Alright, and all we're going to do is we're just going to highlight everything on the plans and unhide it in the view. We'll turn on some color just to be able to see it. Deactivate the view real quick. And let's delete that and just bring it back on really fast. Get out of that hidden mode. There we go. Looks like I have a couple of other like boundary lines that are on here. I'm just going to get rid of that stuff. Alright, and like that should pretty much do it for the site plan. So the site plan is just going to be like looking straight down on top of the project. All you're doing is you're turning on color and making sure it's at that 1 inch equals 20 foot scale. Looks like my site needs a little bit more work. Like I probably need to go back and actually like put the lake in, but that would be something a little bit different from setting up the sheet. Alright, so that's going to work for your site plan. So we'll just leave that there. As far as like those elevation boxes go, we can hide those. You don't have to show those in the site plan. Alright, and if you want to just kind of like rescale the view, you can delete it off your sheet and you can pop that back on. So what that's going to end up looking like for you guys should be something a little bit closer to this, because we had like a site that was a little bit longer than it was wide. Alright, looked like my site needed a little bit more work, so I'll go back and kind of tweak it until it looks like that. But for the most part, like putting the view on there should really just be enabling color, making sure you have the right elements visible in that view, and setting the scale. Alright, so that stuff should be pretty easy. Alright, now let's go down and we'll take a look at the elevations. So we're going to start with the southern elevation all the way down here on the bottom left, and then we're going to kind of like roll the views out. So if you were on this southern view, you turn the house 90 degrees, you're going to see the east side. If you turn it 90 degrees, you're going to see the back side. If you turn it 90 degrees, you're going to see the west side. Alright, so we want to kind of line those up all the way across the bottom. And then the other big thing, every view needs to be the same scale for that. So I have all these on here at 1/8 inch equals 1 foot. That should fit. And then I also want to make sure color's on, and I want to make sure they're all lined up across the same level line. So like that first floor should be even all the way across the entire view. Same thing should be true for the entire sight line or the ground line. Okay, and then what we have is we have each of these views cropped down so that we are kind of cropping off extra stuff that's outside of that view. Alright, and we'll kind of go from there. So let's take a look at what that looks like on the drawing sheet. So what I want to do is I want to bring in all my elevation views. So I'm just going to bring in east, north, south, and west. Alright, and if we look at these right now, there's obviously like a little bit of work that has to get done. Let's start over here with the southern view, and we'll put that one on the sheet. This one looks like it's pretty close, but it's definitely at the wrong scale. Alright, so if I bounce back to the requirements just for a second and take a look at them, elevations are going to be cropped to the sight line, I'm looking for a gradient background. I want to unwrap them from the southern view in a counterclockwise rotation. And then I want them 1/8 inch equals 1 foot on the plans. So we'll come in here, we're going to activate this view just to start. We'll change the scale, we'll go down to an 1/8 inch equals 1 foot scale. That makes the view a little bit smaller. Some other stuff, we have like this crop box on. Alright, so that's kind of a big deal. So we're going to come in here real quick and we'll take a look at the crop box. Alright, to turn the crop box on, you have 2 buttons. Alright, you have 2 crop buttons, and they're like a little toggle system. So one of those buttons makes the crop box visible or invisible. Alright, and then the other one makes it active or non-active. So that's the way they work. Alright, so you can operate in different positions there. You can have the crop box off and invisible. You can have the crop box on and invisible, or you can have it visible and then either active or non-active. So that's basically the way it works. So you're turning your crop box on. I would suggest you make it visible. I wouldn't want to crop off the top of a tree, but we can crop it right down to the ground line. Alright, so if I zoom in on that just a little bit, and we crop that right down to the ground line, that's a line that we want to see, but we don't need to see anything underneath it. Okay, and then we're just going to kind of crop into kind of an even width for the side of the house. It looks like if I go right here, I can maybe keep that tree in the background just a little bit. Alright, and just keep like equal spacing on the sides as much as possible. Alright, once you got that in there, we're going to go down to our graphic display options and kind of configure that stuff just a little bit. So if you were to go realistic would look pretty nice in this view, but it's going to take a really long time for your computer to like render all that stuff up, especially when you're configuring some of the different views. So realistic or consistent colors are totally okay. Alright, some things that I would like to see, and I put back in here, so like a gradient background. Alright, so if we take a look at that really quick, as long as the view's active, I can configure this stuff. Hey, can you guys keep the volume down just a little bit, please? So if I go under graphic display options, we get to tweak some of these parameters just a little bit for what this view is going to look like. You can roll down through this list a little bit. So first off is model display, so you can control kind of the same options that you could with that little blue box. So consistent colors are realistic. You could make some of the objects in here transparent. I'm not going to do that. We can add some shadows to it. So if you want to cast shadows or show ambient shadows, that kind of makes the view look a little bit better, but we also don't want to like maybe hide or cover up like the front face of the building, so it's kind of your call on how you want to do that. Sketchy lines is kind of cool. If you turn on sketchy lines, you can make it look as though there's a little bit of a hand-drawn effect to the view. Alright, I would encourage you to consider that, but again, like we don't want it to look sloppy, we want it to look like kind of neat and clean. So it's up to you if you want to use that. If you're going to use that, maybe keep those settings like pretty low, but I'll leave it up to you guys if you want to include that at all. Depth cueing is going to show like a little bit of depth in the scene. You can choose if you want to use that or not. Lighting, we can control where the sun actually sits in the sky. So if you wanted to keep shadows on but maybe not have a shadow on the front face of the building, we can control that just a little bit. Alright, and then the view that I wanted you guys to actually kind of mess around with just a little bit was the background. So in the background you can put a sky image in there. You can put a gradient in. You also have the option just to put like a picture or an image in there. Alright, so the gradient background looks pretty nice. Just sets up like a ground line for you. As of right now, it looks like the ground isn't necessarily sitting in the correct spot. Alright, so to affect that, I think we actually have to go to the sun settings. And we have to set the ground plane down here to like that ground level. If we apply that and hit OK, now you have like your ground plane at the ground level, but that's going to look pretty nice. Alright, so we'll just kind of tweak that just a little bit. And let's see if we can show the ground just a little bit. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Alright, so now I have that view configured. And what I'm going to do is, once that's already set up, okay, we're going to hit this little button here, Save as View Template. And we're going to call this Elevations. Here we go, Elevations. So I'm going to save that. It's set up in here as my view template for elevations. Okay. And what I'm going to do at this point, I'm going to deactivate the view. We're going to delete it. I'm going to put that south elevation back on. All that does is just kind of resize like the label underneath the heading. All right, and then what we're going to do is we're going to come over to the other three and we're going to try to configure those the same way. All right, so the next view that comes up is going to end up being, it's going to be my east side. All right, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to activate that view. And now that we have those settings already set up, all I have to do is come over to the view template, and I can use that same setup a couple different times. All right, so I don't have to configure everything exactly the same. All that stuff is already tied in. The big thing that I got to do, I got to crop down my view. So I want to try to crop the view to the same height and a similar width as the last view. So we get that set up on the same ground plane line, which I think it should be right there. Then we'll activate it. We'll use our crop options to come in here and attempt to crop this down to roughly the same places. So we got it set up for the front and the south view. Right. If there are any trees or plants or anything like in front of the house, you would hide those. So you want to make sure that you get a clear view of the side of the building. Stuff that's behind the house is not a problem. Okay? Unless you specifically don't want to see something. And at that point, you can just deactivate the view, you can delete it, and put it back on the sheet. But those views should line up consistently right across your page. So now I have south, east. We'll go to the back view. Once again, same thing. I'm just going to activate the view. We'll go over to our view template. We have that elevation view that we already have configured. We're going to just crop down the view at that point, so we'll make the crop box visible and active. Crop that down. Here's the perfect instance of a tree in front of the building. So in this case, we should probably hide this tree in this view. Let's get that up on the sheet next to the other view just to see if how big that's going to have to be. And we can crop that a little bit too. So I want to try to get like these crop boxes kind of level with each other. Alright, you could use some guidelines on the sheet to do that, or you can just do it by eye. Alright, and if you make the crop box invisible, it'll be a little bit less noticeable too. So you can do that across each of the views, just make that invisible. Alright, we're down to the last one. So put that on here. Activate the view. We're going over to our view template one last time. Elevations. We can crop it. And now you have your site plan and your elevations on the sheet. You definitely look presentable. Hide this tree since it's in front of the house. Deactivate the view. Delete it from the sheet. And that was the last one. I think it was west. We'll put that back on. Right, now all I'm going to do is just kind of space these out. So I have them evenly spaced across the bottom of the sheet, but they're all lined up with each other. We can always move them now as a group just to make some room on the sheet. If those views don't line up, you might want to spend a little bit of time on that, just kind of trying to get the picture to actually like look like a straight line across the top of the page. Like I said, you could always use some guidelines just to kind of place something in there. Alright, so you have something to crop to, and then you can come back and remove that. So for instance, down in here, we could take that line that we just put in place and just use that as a guideline. Alright, and once they're lined up all the way across the top, you just delete that line. Then you have your line going straight across the top and straight across the bottom to where you're going to clip those off. Okay? And that'll take a little bit of time to get set up. So I'm going to leave you guys right there. You have your first floor plans, you have your site plan, you have your elevations all lined up on the sheet. We're going to still do a rendering, All right, put a little title on everything and be done with this. All right, good job. Let me know if you have any questions.